Afternoon, dear respected speakers. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Indrani Sengupta, and my colleague, Dr. Richa Agrawal, we welcome you to this session on business intelligence and supply chain resilience on the second day of our two-day online national conference on challenges and changing roles of placement officers post-COVID-19 across B schools. We welcome our eminent speakers for the session, Mr. Jayant Murthy, Joint MD, Kaizen Institute. Sir, we welcome you. Mr. Chetan Contractor, Group Chairman and MD, Detox Group of Companies. We welcome you, sir, at Oro. Mr. Pinab Kulkarni, Founder, Spark, Mumbai. Sir, we welcome you once again. And Mr. Kiran Gajiwala, Head Demand Management, ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel, Surat. We welcome you once again, sir, on behalf of Oro University. Though we are still in COVID era and firmly believe that we will be out of the pandemic very soon, to be optimistic is already a concern for us. Hence, we have scheduled this season to discuss the impact and foreseen challenges and opportunities in the era of supply chain. We also talk about agile supply chain these days. To begin with, let me invite Dr. Monica Suri ma'am, our Head School of Business at Oro, to give her opening remarks for this session. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Indrani. And once again, sir, on behalf of my School of Business team and specifically the conference committee, I welcome you all to this technical session on supply chain management. Though I'm not specialized experts and practitioner as you all are in the supply chain management, so I'm an academician and researcher. And out of my understanding, I'll just share with you some of the quick facts which we all are facing today, specifically in this COVID-19 era. When you see since last 3 months or so, we have seen that the most impacted functional area is supply chain management. So not only to a particular sector or to a particular industry, but it has impacted the whole supply chain management system. All the intermediaries have been, interfering and overlapping over a period of time and shrinking them with respect to their cost factors and with respect to their other marginal cost factors and everything. So I personally feel that this is the one area where we need to focus upon with respect to placements also, because this whole conference is aligned to placements. And why we have kept specifically the technical sessions with reference to each specialization of MBA, so that once we are offering students to industry, once they pass out at the time of internship or final placement, we would like to know your insights on various topics based on supply chain management only. Within the supply chain management, there are many, it's an ocean of subtopics and sub areas which actually are aligned and integrated with the supply chain management. So we would like to understand from each one of you, from various industries, wherever you are coming from, we'd like to know that what is the expectation of today's industry when it comes to hiring the supply chain professionals for their respective sector. Because the situation of placement in next 2 years is quite uncertain. And this is one area which is also one of the key area for students to work. And many of the MBA students, they love to take this specialization also, because they see earlier, pre-COVID-19 era I'm talking about, they used to see a lot of scope with respect to their employment opportunities and career enhancement and many more things. So from you people, from all the experts present over here, we would like to know that how you can give us a roadmap to groom our business school with respect to this particular specialization. What more we should do in our curriculum design, what more we should do when it comes to our virtual internships across the sectors, so that our students should be the first choice of industry once they pass out from the respective UG or PG programs after 2 years or 3 years span of time. So largely this is the purpose of this particular technical session. So we would also like to know from you also in your industries how you have revamped and restructured the whole process of supply chain management in this post-COVID era or during the COVID era, because I know there are many changes going on in all functional areas. So we would like to learn from you that what was it earlier and what you have done in terms of, bringing that adaptability to this particular situation of COVID-19, and who are the people involved in the whole process of supply chain management, how the whole supply chain management has been, completely transformed and revamped in this COVID-19 era. Because right now for every business, the concern is not the sustainability. Survival is the concern. So I'm sure for the supply chain management also we have a good survival strategy and a roadmap ready as a preventive approach. And for your information, just I think in the month of June, we invited Managing Director of Amul, Mr. Sodiji was here, RS Sodiji was here, and that was the right time when Amul was actually revamping and re-strategizing their supply chain management, because they were the one who never stopped the delivery of their product throughout. Even today also, when there was lockdown or lockup, whatever is there, they are all time working and their supply chain management is very smoothly going on. So likewise, we would like to understand from each one of you, from your own experiences, vast experiences, and from your own industry perspective, that what are the changes going on in the area of supply chain and how we can make our students more employable, whether they're MBA students or BBA students, if they're going after BBA also for the job. So what are your expectations from professionals who are passing out from MBA program and universities like us? So these are the hardcore objectives that we have defined for this particular session. Over and above, you're free to, that depends upon chair, if they have any additional objectives to meet. So it's up to you, sir. You are the chair of the session. But from my end, this is the one. I thought, let me just brief you about this. Okay, so once again, I'm thankful to you all for joining. So it's over to you, Richa.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry for that thing. My computer created some problem. Sorry for that. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your opening remarks. So now let me introduce you all to the guests of the session. Our session chair today, Mr. Jayant Murthy. He is an industrial engineer from University of Mysore and a Fulbright Fellow from USA and is the partner and director at Kaizen Institute, India. It has been nearly 2 decades since Kaizen Institute started its operations in India and about 15 years since they got started across in Africa. With over 300 plus clients in India and over 100 plus in Africa, Kaizen is at the forefront of delivering performance improvement and operational excellence. Combined, they deliver excellence in the area of performance improvement and the operating systems. You are welcome, sir. Yes, sir.
We also have with us Mr. Chetan Contractor, Group Chairman and MD, Detox Group of Companies. Mr. Contractor founded Detox Group in the year 1995 with a vision to promote sustainable development in harmony with nature. He identified the opportunity to supply air pollution control devices to textile houses in Surat and laid the foundation stone of the group as a fabrication workshop. Considering the expanding needs of clients, he developed an in-house team of engineers for techno-legal consultancy services and established a laboratory for analysis of environmental parameters. The vision document of the Gujarat government, he developed common environmental infrastructure projects and established a waste management facility on Build, Own and Operate BOO basis at Kutch, Gujarat in 2008. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, may I introduce Mr. Pinak Kulkarni ji. He is the founder, Spark at Mumbai. Mr. Pinak Kulkarni ji is a supply-focused supply chain practitioner of best-in-class improvement philosophies, tools and techniques. He has 2 decades of extensive and global experience in manufacturing industry and supply chain coaching, consulting and training. He works in the domains of supply chain strategy, lean in supply chain, supply management, inventory management, supply strategy, end-to-end purchasing, supply chain risk management, and so forth and so on. So we welcome you, Mr. Kulkarni, to the panel.
Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you all to our third panelist, Mr. Kiran Gajiwala, who is the Head Demand Management at ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel, Surat. Lead business architect with over 28 years of experience in architecturing, implementing and operating supply chain management in metals, manufacturing and retail. Extensive experience in setting up and managing business operations which require deep understanding of critical businesses and its key drivers in multiple markets and industries. Lead business architect for designing one of the largest demand-driven supply network, DDSN, in retail and metal companies. extensive experience on setting up various planning systems, which include sales and operations planning, forecasting, replenishment, inventory management, to name a few. Before joining AMNS, Sir was working with Reliance Retail as supply chain analyst. Thank you, sir. We welcome you here. With this brief introduction of all our speakers today, I would like to hand over the platform to the session chair of the day, Mr. Jayant Murthy, sir, to take the deliberation further. Please, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity and a warm welcome to the host and Dr. Suri from the institution, and a great and a warm welcome, personal welcome from my behalf to all the panelists. I see that we have a lot of experience within the room, if I can say, the virtual room. A lot of varied kind of experiences. People who, we have Mr. Contractor, who is an entrepreneur. That's a very unique, position to bring insights from. We have Mr. Kulkarni, who's also been in the industry and is now a consultant, has been helping organizations to think and develop, supply chain robustness. We have Kiranji, who's also from the industry, he's worked for some of the largest companies in India. So it's a very interesting panel. Thank you very much. And, I would, personally, I am not a supply chain expert, so I will not risk and venture into that specific domain. My personal interest has been has always been in the area of Kaizen, driving improvements in organization. But nowadays, I'm more focused on managing our consulting practice and growing it, less of actual direct interactions in terms of delivery. So my skills may be dated, it may be rusted. So it's better I learn from the experts here and quiz them. So my job is to quiz and try and extract some insights, valuable insights from all of you. So the first question that I will like to pose, or starting comment I would like from all the panelists, is that supply chain. They say, for example, the micro and small industries is the real barometer when you talk of the health of an economy. I also believe that supply chain is the backbone of any economy. I want your reflections just to share with everybody who are tuned in today. Why is supply chain really the backbone of an economy? Your comments and your insights, please. Thank you. Probably we can start with Mr. Kulkarni, and then I'll go to Kiran San and Chetan San and Dr. Suri also. Thank you.
You have risked yourself with an opening batsman like me. Let me also tell you that. Anyway, I'll try and answer this question in a structured framework so that I don't become a bit chaotic in my response. Let's put it in simple terms. We have got something like 6.5 crore MSMEs in this country today. And if you really look at it, most of them are tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 to an OEM. Their basic job is to create value for their stakeholders, predominantly their own customers, their own suppliers, their own employees. Most of them are proprietorships, which means run by a single man technically. If you really look at it, what role does the supply chain play here? I had a chance to work with a company which is roughly 400 crore CR turnover. Now, this fellow actually is a typical MSME, or you call it as SME. When you put a frame in the mind of that person, you talk about growing revenues. And how does supply chain help him grow revenues? He was supplier to an OEM, and naturally speaking, when an SME is a supplier to an OEM, he has a SOB with him, with the customer of his. Now the whole game is to increase his share of business, which means increase volumes. If you want to sell more of existing, that naturally means you need to improve productivity, because the price of the product is already discovered by the customer. So you cannot go to a customer to whom you want to sell a product X, which you have already been supplying, and try and increase the price. That's out of question. How does supply chain play a role here? Help improve revenue. Improve revenue, A, by increasing volume of the products that you're already selling in the market, and B, faster new product introductions. Now, any organization which is an MSME or an SME sector organization, they get to develop new components, they get to develop new products from their own customers. Now, there was a time when you used to get 6 weeks of time, 8 weeks of time, sometimes 12 months of time to develop a new component. I think that's outdated. Mostly you are going to get 3 days. If you're working in automobile industry today, the purchase fellow of the OEM is going to call you and say, you get this product for me in 3 days. The proposal needs to be in 3 days. So just to put a structure to the thought process, supply chain helps me improve my revenue. Revenue can be built on two fronts. One is I increase the volume of the products that I'm already selling. Second, through new product introductions. The traditional role that the supply chain plays for a MSME is cutting cost, which means improving operating margins. Most of the MSMEs in the country today, if you look at a foundry today, he's working with 4% margin. The basic job of a supply chain is to either reduce COGS or reduce SG&A. And in my opinion, SG&A, just for the sake of everyone, in my opinion, SG&A, which is sales, general and administrative expenses, for an SME is not a very high number. If you really look at the SME's cost composition, his SG&A does not exceed 7 to 10%. His COGS is the major component, which means his procurement cost, his manufacturing cost, his logistics cost, and all the overheads associated with all these three components. Which means if you really look at the supply chain of an MSME, you are actually targeting COGS. And in my opinion, now coming to a context where I would like to bring in a very important context for MSME particularly. Supply chain may help him grow revenue. Supply chain may help him improve operating margin. But the most crucial part, which an MSME today in supply chain is struggling with, is asset efficiency. If you really look at it, for me, assets naturally fall under two. One is the monetary asset, which for me is cash flow. And second is the physical asset, which means his warehousing, his shop floor, his materials handling equipment. I think most of the SMEs today have overdone their investments in these physical assets, and cash flow is under stress for two major reasons. One, the demand varies too much, which means the MSME is, I don't want to use a very harsh word, but he's a subordinated entity to the OEM. The harsh word which I would have actually used is he's slave to the demand of the OEM. Slave is a too harsh a word to use. His cash flow is unfortunately too long. And if I bring in the COVID context, his suppliers are not giving him much of credit, but his customers are asking for longer credit periods. And if you go by the industry data, we are lucky that the 31st August moratorium, one way or the other, RBI actually got it restructured. We like it or we don't like it, 31st March 2021, you restructure your loans. So many of the pitfalls of that are not going to be seen too early. In my opinion, supply chain plays a role here. So just to summarize, my supply chain for an MSME can help me increase revenues or improve operating margins, and most importantly, it should focus on improving asset efficiency.
Thank you very much, Kulkarni-san. So I'll jump to Mr. Contractor. You are, you're from the arena. You are an entrepreneur. You run an organization. And we may make comments sitting outside the arena, you're inside. So I want an insider's view about how important is managing your supply chain end to end. How much of a pivot, how much of a bearing or importance it has in your business. Like Mr. Kulkarni said, it has a great impact on profitability, the speed to new product development, etc. So your comments, please.
Thank you, Jan. Jan, in fact, we are into waste management, preliminary into waste management. Now we have to get to production activities also. And I do agree with Pina that it is very important that we have a proper supply management. I would say that my assets should sweat properly. It may be equipment or it may be manpower resources, but it has to sweat. and a proper supply chain management will definitely help me out. And we have experienced this practically also before COVID and during COVID. Our assets were practically unutilized for about 18 days, which has put us back by 3 months. Just by 18 days, not properly utilizing our asset has put us back by 18 months. And other issues which we faced was getting proper raw material, adequate raw material in time. And this was preliminary because of improper exposure of our procurement, which led to this. And by experience, I can say that yes, whoever is there in this supply chain system, he needs to have a very calm mind, and he should be well organized with the market scenario and what is presently happening in the market. And his skills his soft skills has to be very good, which of course now we are improving. And because of improper supply chain management, we have gone into a loss of close to about 25 lakhs rupees in our engineering unit recently. So it is basically timely procurement of material, deliveries to our clients. Then we have other products, other equipments which are procured, and these equipments are also not properly reaching our places on time. So these are some of the problem issues. So yes, asset utilization and sweating of asset is a must in the entire supply chain management, and this reflects to the entire profitability of our organization.
Thank you very much, sir. So the very interesting insights, and here is a real life example of where an entrepreneur is this is like a breaking news, if I can say, where he's talking of how some decisions, inefficiencies, inexperience has caused losses, and probably some of this could have been managed better. Maybe some of this were because of the circumstances around created by this pandemic. Nevertheless, we will come back to this. Thank you, Mr. Contractor. Now, Kiran-san, Mr. Kulkarni was saying that one can well understand where he is coming from. SMEs don't have so much of cushion. Many times it is one-man teams, very small bandwidth, etc. But you represent a very large organization, and we always feel that large organizations have a lot of cushion, a lot of shock, ability to absorb shock. So when it comes to supply chain management, how much of importance do you in your organization give to making sure that the supply chain is robust so it can take shocks both from the demand side and also from the supply side? So some comments on this, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much for such a wonderful opportunity. And let me tell Mr. Pinak, that he is the opening batsman, and he gave a score of 300, and he scored along 299. So only one is left for Mr. Chetan and me. So nothing to worry on that part. But the supply chain management, the world itself started, I think, in long back in 1982 by Oliver and Weber, which primarily at that point of time they correlate it with mostly on the logistic and the integrated functions. But later on it develops to the value chain, and then production planning. Everything is going together, and nowadays people also like we also integrate the financial planning along with the supply chain planning, and we put together the across entire function as a whole. So now the question you asked about how the big organization react to the such kind of disruption what we faced recently. But nothing less, I just remember one sentence which I read somewhere a few days back on sorry for my thought. There are decades nothing happened, but there are weeks decades happens. So we actually live in such kind of scenario where we don't know when what is going to happen. But last 6 months, if we see as an organization AMNS, we as a team learn too much from this disruption, and because of our best processes, best systems, we could survive, not only survive, but we could recover within a 1.5 month to the 100% capacity pre-COVID era. So if the time permits, I'll try to explain how these activities go, so that so that you can also understand how big organizations are aligning to this supply chain processes and supply chain technology. So the journey started in January, February, late January and February, when we came to know about the China is having a difficult era where 10,000 plus cases are cropping up, and day by day cases are increases. So at that point of time, we did our risk management study and try to find out which are the suppliers are from L1 supplier from China and which are the suppliers from India. And we try to find out the risk associated with each and every supplier, and try to cover the risk either through access ordering to the supplier, so that in near future we should not be having a problem in the supply chain. And the second is trying to order some part of the quantity to the level 2 supplier within the India and across the world other than China, so that we are secure on our critical line items. Not only that, we also try to mitigate or try to foresee the situation where maybe in India what will happen, whether mines is going to close, what will be the scenario. So those scenario we try to build within the supply chain and try to secure some of the fines and some of the raw material for ourselves. So this is called the redundancy within the supply chain, which is actually the costlier thing to do in the kind of the lean manufacturing scenario. But over a period of time, lean manufacturing, when we follow the lean, we have actually reduced the buffer flexibility within the supply chain management. But then we are not left with anything when there is a disruption happen across the global scenario. But the second part of our corrective actions, what we took as a big organization, that we build the flexibility across the value chain so that we can service alternate product. At the same time, we have also tried to focus more on the preserving cash, so that we should not be ending up the lot of inventory which is going to be unsold, because we also know that whenever market is going to open after the lockdown, the run of the kind of mill product everybody is going to sell into the market, and at that point of time you are not gaining anything from your inventory. So that's why we want to reserve the cash for the future. But at the same time, we also don't want to spend any money from the reserve cash, and we want to cover our fixed costs. So basis that, we try to sell some of the raw material, which is finished good, which is the raw material of the upstream process, downstream process. We try to sell in the market, and we kind of create the flexibility within the supply chain. But the most important and the most turning point is our S&OP process for this entire period, robust S&OP process, which is
what is S&OP for the benefit? I'm sorry.
It's a sales and operation planning process, where actually there are many words to that. One can say that integrated S&OP process, another can say the value process, another word is resilient process, but we call as a S&OP process. So this starts with the collaborating with the supply chain partner as well as the customers across whatever we have, the A class of customer and A class of suppliers. So we collaborate with them, we collaborate with the domestic customers. We continuously asking them on a daily basis, what is the scenario look like? What will be your opening plan when government is going to allow you? And similarly, we also ask to the supplier side, when are you going to start? What are your customers are saying to you? So that we come to know that we took the crowd wisdom in our supply chain planning itself, so that you build a scenario. We build the scenario, different kind of scenarios, because you cannot predict when there is a lot of uncertainty across the world. You cannot predict anything. So you need to build certain scenarios. So we build scenario like if Maharashtra is not going to open and only Gujarat is opening or Rajasthan is opening, what will be the demand pattern? What will be the demand pattern when only certain part of the country can be open and only Maharashtra is not opening? And what will be demand if nothing is opening? Then what will be the scenario? At the same time, we also have some context over the global environment, and we try to fetch the information from the China, that what is China looks like after this massive disruption happen and how they perform. They are having the V-shaped recovery. So we try to figure out which are the sectors which is going to have a V-shaped recovery and how we can inbuild in our supply chain and try to figure out how the demand will look like and what should we be producing for that. And basis that we generated some kind of pre-finished stocks, semi-finished stock, which can be kept in a storage area and which is useful when the actual market opens up in the May month. Also, during this uncertainty, we try to also do the process, S&OP process, more frequently than the earlier. Earlier we used to do process is on the monthly basis, but during this uncertainty, lot of uncertainty, we started this process on a weekly basis, so that we actually come to know actual what is happening on the ground. Not only that, we also reduce the planning horizon from week to the 3 days bucket, so that we can react very fast to any change happening on the demand side. So these are the strategies which we try to accommodate during this period of time. And the last but not the least, we also invest heavily during this part in the developing the skill manpower, because you always know that when there is a COVID, and if you are one high skill person is going off the board for 14 or 30 days, then you are going to be nowhere. So you have to handle such thing by developing some multi-skill talent during this period of time. And last but not the least, we try to also do the simulation. After this 6 months, when we passed in July, we did the simulation, what went wrong, what went right during this period of time, so that we can try to align for the future what we'll be doing with this kind of scenario. So I think the answer is slightly longer, but it justifies.
Thank you, Kiran-san. So I'm sure Mr. Contractor and Mr. Kulkarni will agree that what Kiran-san was describing and sharing is something that is, done by extremely matured, capable organization, where you're doing scenario planning, and it's quite amazing to note that as soon as they heard of the pandemic in China, as early as January, they started looking at. Unfortunately, this kind of wisdom or access to these kind of capabilities doesn't exist with, as Mr. Kulkarni said, the smaller organizations, and either they are caught off guard, either carrying a lot of inventory, thereby their money is stuck, or they are caught in a situation where they have no inventory Probably they have orders, but they have no inventory to serve it. And so they are, either caught with no inventory or excess inventory. And I think that is the biggest challenge when you talk of inventory management, either stock outs or excess stocks. And balancing that fine balance is the entire game that you're talking about. Since we are representing this panel as part of an education institution, especially a business school, I would like to very gently go towards what is happening in terms of the employment, the future for students. I think that is what the community is looking at. So I would like to start off by asking the same question to all the panelists, is that there is a lot of what we call as the advent, or there's a sudden surge in call it generally automation, right? So there is a lot of use of various it could be artificial intelligence, it could be robotics, a lot of things, high tech, in this supply chain domain. So how does that change the demand for especially, I'm not talking of blue collar, but the professional lot, the educated people, how does that impact the demand? Where will the demand go towards? That's my first question, because all of you are at the cutting edge of this domain, of this supply chain industry. So where is the demand coming from for students who are right now pursuing their business education or will be coming into this domain very soon? So can I start again with Mr. Kulkarni, because this is something that the students will be really keen to know, and the faculty also. Thank you.
I'll try and again keep it within a framework. If you really look at it, there are 3 levels grads from these schools actually get recruited nowadays. Mostly people join in at the tactical level of supply chain, which means B school grads normally get into roles like demand planning, supply relationships, procurement management. Some of them would actually get into logistics planning. So that's the tactical layer of supply chain. There's a strategic layer of supply chain where A grade B school kids normally end up with. That's the strategic layer of supply chain, which means A, network design, which in jargon is called supply chain network design. And second is customer service level objectives to be met, which means stakeholder value creation. These 2 layers is somewhere I think the B school grads actually get into. The execution layer of supply chain, which is predominantly monotonous in its routine, which means follow-up with suppliers, placing of vehicles, follow-up for internal production guys. I don't think B school grads get into that role. So the first clarity I think we should have is, where do these B school grads get into the industry in the supply chain roles? Where does technology come into picture? And I perfectly feel that the simulation-based technology, which is nowadays in vogue, if you really look at it, predominantly in supply chain, we have got, if I broadly talk about it, except for the ERP, which I think should be discarded as a technology solution, it's just a transactional system. If you really look at it, we have got robotic process automation, we've got artificial intelligence, machine learning, we've got a bit of a flavor for advanced planning and optimization systems, which probably Mr. Kiran uses for his demand management. I used to use it 15 years back in Ranbaxy, when I used to be an employee of that company. And last but not the least, there's too much of a talk around this thing called blockchain. I discard blockchain for a very large part of it to be implemented over the next 10 years in India. So where does the B school grad with the core domain knowledge of supply chain, which I would assume that he has, by the way, I mean, if we are talking about someone looking at technology as a career within supply chain or technology driven career of supply chain, the presumption has to be that his competence in supply chain exists. We cannot have a person who does not know what is an RFQ getting into an e-procurement kind of a role. That's something that will not happen. I'll give you 2 or 3 major case studies which are happening in this country today in terms of application of technology to supply chain and how processes, public practices are undergoing a change. Let's look at a strategic level initiative, customer service. Probably I'm only going to give you 2 examples simply because I don't want to be too long in my answer.
Hello.
And now let's look at a couple of applications. India's largest battery manufacturer, the traditional battery manufacturer. I don't know how many of you have heard about this case study. How does supply chain rethink using technology? And that's where I think B School grads can start thinking about for their placements. Think about a direct application of technology to change the value proposition offered by the supply chain to its customer. Case study number 1, a company which is India's arguably the largest battery manufacturer. Imagine you and I drive a car. All that we know is we go sit in the car, put on the ignition. Nowadays we don't even put on the ignition. We press the button saying that look, the car needs to start. Many of us don't even care for is the battery in the right condition or wrong condition. We just wake up one day to figure out the vehicle is not starting and probably it's a battery problem. A traditional supply chain solution for that is we have got a customer care number available 24/7. You just give a call and we'll give it to you. In the traditional world of supply chain, that's a perfectly acceptable solution. Think of a B School grad who leverages on technology and gives that as a solution. You've got these IoT based solutions, right? The new concept which came to supply chain world today is this particular battery manufacturer has turned himself from being a product seller to a service company. So next time when you go and buy a battery, this company is not going to ask you for your 8,000 rupees for the battery. They're probably going to tell you, sir, please pay 1,600 rupees for the AMC and pay it for the 5 years. You have a chance to replace the battery within the 3 years. What does that do? Actually, every 10 seconds, the signal is sent by the battery to a central server, which is then connected across the network of mechanics. So it does not matter if you bought the battery in Surat and tomorrow you are in Pune. If the health of the critical performance parameters of the battery, if are found to be not working well, irrespective of the location that you are in, a mechanic is going to pop up next to your car and tell you, please give me your mobile OTP and I'm going to repair the problem. This is where I think supply chain solutions in technology domain are going to dramatically change. And this has happened in India. I'm not quoting a case which is theoretical. This is absolute practical case which has happened with commercial vehicle manufacturers in this country. And I don't need to buy a battery anymore. Can B School grads who are aspiring for supply chain careers, who I'm very sure they know what is IoT, they know what is RPA, they know what is the long form of probably AI and ML. They probably are Googling around what is blockchain because that's the buzzword. I don't foresee a problem with that. What I foresee is the B School grads who are getting into supply chain roles, into strategic layer of the supply chain, think about a supply chain value creation proposal. That linkage is something that they need to develop competence for. So in olden days, we used to say this, right? There's data, then there is information, then there is judgment, and then there is a decision. So that I think is something that I'm looking at. I'll leave the second case study because I think I've consumed 5 or 6 minutes, which is too long.
Thank you. Very interesting. So there is a definite call for looking at entrepreneurship, looking at opportunities to blend technology and supply chain issues, and find solutions which can work together. That's very interesting. So I will move on to Kiran-san. I'm sure you also hire a lot of business school graduates, and when you talk of supply chain in your organization, where do these business school graduates really fit in? What are the kind of roles that you of course there must be the induction, etc., that normally happens, but after that, where do you think that business, people with business education, students coming from this background, can contribute in the new evolving, highly fluid kind of situation. Some views on this, please.
Yeah. So let me slightly first add a few more things to Mr. Pinaki, because Mr. Pinak, on the opportunity. I think not only opportunity available on the technology side for the supply chain professional, but what I see most on the R&D side kind of supply chain management, where people can do a lot of stress tests for the supply chain and try to figure out what can be the scenarios going forward. So such kind of R&D is one area where supply chain professional can enhance their career. Yeah, B school people can enhance their career. The another area where Mr. Mukesh Ambani keeps on talking on virtual reality, where supply chain professional or B school can more focus, because nowadays people are not going to the shop mall or to shop the cars, because if you see on reality last month 20% car sales are through online portals. So there will be a big platform coming on the virtual reality side, where people needs more technology savvy, and people have to give experience like you are roaming around the shop kind of things. Now coming to sir your question on the how big organization, what big organization are doing with big school students. So obviously we place them for the risk management kind of scenario, where there are a lot of risks, like financial risk is one kind of risk, the supply chain risk is one kind of risk, political risk is one kind of risk. So we place them in the area where we need to manage the risk and we need to analyze the scenarios. The second part of their area more focus on the strategy point of view, so where they need to build strategy, because when they come from B school, they had a lot of case studies, they have undergone a lot of case studies, and they gain a lot of experience through various scenarios. So they have been placed in this along with the top management team, what we call CXOs. Along with them, they are operating as a business strategists. The third layer is on more on the side, on the again technology side, where IT systems needs to be more aligned to the business requirement. So you can also call a data analytics group, or you can also call the technology group where they have been placed. So these are the three areas where they normally place in the big organization.
Thank you. If I can, thank you very much. If I can pull in Dr. Suri, you told me, ma'am, that there is quite a number of students are attracted to take the specialization. So just to, for our benefit of the panelists, what is the typical size of a batch when you take MBA, MBA batch, and how many would kind of go into supply chain specialization? Are you offering that as a specialization, and how many would select percentage roughly?
Yeah. So thanks for the question. Till now, we are offering marketing, human resource, international business, and finance as the specialization. But yes, they have some core modules which has to be taught to all the specializations, because we think that supply chain is not only for the students who are taking it as a specialization, as a core. So it is needed in marketing equally, it is needed in HR equally, it is needed equally in the area of finance also, as you all are stating from your own perspectives. So largely, we actually ensure that this should be taught as a mandatory subject because I don't think that there is any sector where, or any role or any job description where supply chain is not needed. And I'll also, because I was waiting that I should also share with you, like as you are sharing supply chain of your respective sectors, but I would like to bring to your notice that education sector is one sector. Even when there was lockdown, there was only one sector which was open throughout, virtually, and that is education system, whether it is in India or abroad. And when I see supply chain management, I'll not say supply chain management from the education point of view as educationists. We prefer to call it as value chain management, because our supply chain value chain management starts from the process of admission and ends with industry, right? This is the whole process and supply chain and connecting dots that we have. So I'll come to each and every aspect one by one. So when it comes to admissions, again, there's very tough era for the parents also, because they are virtually scattered. And when you are choosing one particular profession for your child or for your son or daughter, you prefer to visit the campus physically, and you want to feel the taste of every aspect and every service that the universities are offering. But yes, in this particular era, every university, all good universities across the globe, including Oro, we are giving the virtual tours, right? Wherein we are placing all the functional aspects, important aspects of learning teaching process in place. And then we are giving a virtual tour. And as far as the AR, VR is concerned, augmented reality and virtual reality, you will be glad to know, once you visit Oro University website, you will see first window will be of Orobot. So Orobot is one project which we are doing with Mr. Hardik Desai, who is the known entrepreneur across Gujarat. He is being the ranker in IIT also. And he is mentoring our students of journalism. And all the students of journalism are the virtual ambassadors on that particular platform of Orobot. So it is still in the testing stage. But just for your excitement and understanding, you just go on that particular window later on, and once you blink on that particular window, our students are Orobots. They are robots over there, and they are in the virtual positions over there, and you ask them the questions and information about the examination, about the guidelines of the university, admission process, internship, library resources, classroom setup, so they will be able to answer you. So what I'm saying is, Oro University, with due honor, I think we have sensed this COVID-19 situation much ahead in comparison to any other place, because we have a very strong virtual learning system platform, wherein we have actually continuously uploading our videos and our learning material and reference notes for the students, so that they should not be debarred from learning, whether it is COVID-19 or any upcoming disaster in future. So we were proactively taking care of all these aspects at the teaching learning process. Because why I say that we don't use the supply chain management in this particular education sector specifically, I see it more of a value proposition, a value chain, because we are connecting dots. And here, this is one sector wherein the continuous improvement and continuous assessment is needed. When you see any other industry, you may be doing appraisal maybe once in a year or twice a year. But this is one process where we believe in continuous evaluation and continuous transformation. At the same time, continuous improvement. So why I'm saying this, because in supply chain generally, there are two important aspects. One is the process and second is people. Why most of the supply chain management processes fail? Maybe your processes are at place, very high quality standard processes. You have bought it from different softwares from all over the world, maybe from McKinsey or KPMG. They all intervened in your process of analysis and data management and business analytics and all that. But until you don't have trained people in your supply chain management as intermediaries. So here in our education sector, all the stakeholders are playing a very important role as intermediaries. Even students, because students are also the ambassadors, and we groom our students in such a way so that they should be the first choice of industry once they pass out. It's a different choice altogether, because largely 90% of students who are coming to us are from the family business setup. So they can employ professors like me in their own industry rather than I offer them a particular job in a particular sector or corporates. So we have that kind of profiling of students who are coming up. But yes, as you rightly said, that entrepreneurship is another aspect which need to be focused on. But now the challenge for the education institution across the country, specifically the B schools, is Now, will we get the same exposure when we are offering them the virtual internship? For example, if I'm talking about the virtual internship to my student in area of marketing and advertising, he can do all the content writing, designing, documentation, everything at his end. But if one of my student is interested in supply chain management, so will I be able to bring the same impact in integration to that particular industry, let us say in Amul? So Amul may offer my student the virtual internship process, but will they get the same exposure which they are getting hands-on in a physical living setup over there? So all these challenges are there, but yes, as we have some protocols and we have already started our process of digital infrastructure fully, so that we should not compromise on the quality of teaching and the quality of learning. So this is the core objective we have defined for School of Business. And as far as the placement is concerned, industry is very much aligned with us. We have collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce. CII is very closely associated with us. FICCI is supporting us with this particular conference. IMA, that is All India Management Association, they are very much in regularly. They are offering us simulation programs to our students, and we have the licenses of various simulations which we are offering to our MBA students. And in the classroom setup, though experiential learning might be a buzzword or new word for some of the institutions, but at Oro University, right from beginning, we believe in nothing can be taught. So we always believe in learning by doing. So this is what is the Oro University philosophy as per the core values. And as far as the faculty training, as I told you that any supply chain management will be successful if all processes are in place and the people are well trained. Right? You can't expect me as a professor that if I am teaching my class, I should not know how to actually, where are the keys lying on that particular keyboard of particular number, or maybe an arrow button. So if I'll not be well trained digitally, if I'll not be well trained as per the today's current existing scenario to offer a wonderful online learning experience to my students, impact will be zero. Right? So in our industry, we see value chain management to bring the highest impact, to the teaching learning process, not only for the students, but teachers should also enjoy teaching, online. Only then you will bring the content, that impact. I cannot say that I'm a dissatisfied teacher and I'm bringing happy students. It's not possible. If I'm dissatisfied, I can never transform students because I'm not satisfied from within. So I think if I'm not well trained, if I'm not well equipped with whatever is expected out of me in this particular COVID-19 scenario, I will never be able to transfer my skills and transmit my skills to my students. So just to conclude this, that Oro University, I'm glad to share that we are proactively taking care of all these things. When the whole country was thinking of examinations, we were done with the examination virtually at that point in time. And we are about to commence our session, old session from 17th of August and new session with effect from the first week of September. So we are ready with all the preparations, and this is only possible because our value chain management is completely in place, in line to each other, without any gaps. And obviously, we cannot compromise on the quality standards. And rest is quite uncertain. We can't assure placements at this point in time. But yes, I'll be glad to share that yesterday only I received a call from one of my students. He has been placed in this Richa Which company, Bhupa. Hello? Yeah, Richa?
Max Bhupa.
Yeah, Max Bhupa. So still there are students who are getting placed. So those students need to feel insecure, who may not be performers and competent. But the people who are competent, I think there's a big queue of jobs waiting for them. So we can't say there are no jobs at this point in time. Jobs are there and performers are needed every time. So this is what I wanted to share with you from the university's point of view. And with your advice and suggestions from your core areas, I've noted down few specializations also, which you brought into your conversation, and will surely add that into our content so that we can actually bring the best to our students. It's over to you, Paxer. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some questions which are popping up on the Q&A panel. There are some questions which are truly very relevant. It needs. So there is somebody here, Tanu Narang, who's asking that small businesses. How do you, what is the recommendation in these times when there is a major cash crunch in terms of investing in business intelligence and all various technology options available, So the question to Mr. Kulkarni, I would start, is that, there is a lot of technology available, right? Even for a small business. But for a small business owner, when he has to really be very careful where he is investing his money, where he is putting his money, what is your take on technology? I mean, how critical it is for him to invest in technology? Is there a lot of opportunities they can for improvement and for optimization even without technology? So that's always a question, and I'm sorry, but very quickly, people who sell technology and solutions, they will always, from their perspective, they'll say this is the magic pill, you buy this absolutely. And everything. So
they always have the moon, right? Anyway, just to answer this query from Tanu Narang, and the context is a small or a micro enterprise. So the question is very focused on a particular entity which is extremely small in its size, may not have the cash, because it's already stated that during the cash crunch situation that one is passing by right now, should someone invest in BI actually? Single statement answer would be a small / micro enterprise actually does not require BI. It's meant for simulating scenarios of a scale, considering large number of variables and the rate of change of those variables to be very high. If you can imagine a 2x2 matrix like that, on the x-axis put number of variables, on the y-axis put the rate of change in those variables. You need BI when the rate of change of variables is too high, the number of variables being evaluated is very high. But that probably applies to someone like Mr. Kiran, a large enterprise. As he rightly said sometime back, take a very simple scenario of his own risk planning. He's considering strategic risks, he's considering operations risks, he's considering compliance risks, he's also considering reporting risks and all the variables which go into that. A very small enterprise actually does not require to do all of this. His OEM is doing it for him. So basically my answer would be that irrespective of the cash crunch, don't invest money. Technology is as good as the input that you get. And for a small enterprise, probably speaking, it's something which is kind of a white elephant. Someone who wants to invest in technology domain in a small and micro enterprise probably starts with an integrated software like an ERP, can be JD Edwards, can be SAP, Oracle, whatever. Because his first job is to get his processes integrated through the software. BI is meant for a different purpose.
Thank you very much, Kulkarni sir.
May I add one thing?
Please. Yes.
He is very right in saying that small does not require any kind of technology. But at the same time, they need to look at their processes and they should make their processes so robust that like Dabbawalas who are having a certification of Six Sigma, they don't have any systems in place, but still they have the Six Sigma certification. So like this, they should also make the robust processes or small SMEs so that they can earn lot of, or they can eliminate lot of wastages and efficiency and gain lot of efficiencies. Just on that part.
At the risk of intervening, can I use 30 seconds of time?
Sure, please do.
Because I like what Mr. Kiran said. I'll give you a live example. One of India's largest tractor manufacturer happens to be my client. I shouldn't say customer, a client. And for 3 continuous years, he's giving his best supplier quality award to a particular supplier out of a city called Nashik. And that fellow is actually, because you use the word Six Sigma, and that fellow is actually delivering 0 ppm. You and I know 0 ppm is something that is unachievable by all standards. Now, when I went and observed the process on the shop floor of that fellow, what has happened here is 40% of his staff is nothing but a QC staff. And even at the end of the line, he has got 15% rejection, which goes into the rework area, gets reworked, and then gets dispatched. Which means for a small and medium enterprise, this fellow was 125 CR turnover. He needs to put his processes to be more robust. He doesn't need BI. What he needs is take away the variations in the process steps. So I like what Mr. Kiran said. You don't need BI. You actually need processes which are more robust.
Absolutely. And I think at this point I can speak from as a student of Kaizen that you need to eliminate waste first, all kinds of waste and variation, then keep adding and adding and adding and trying to improve. So improvement by deleting stupidity, errors, rework, waste, excess inventory, all that I think is the first thing that you should explore and exhaust before you jump into investing into anything, investing in more human resources, space, equipments, technology, whatever. So I think that's very important. And I see very often in the work that we do that people are ready to jump to technology, buying hardware or new software, while they're, as Mr. Kiran said and Mr. Kulkarni agrees, their processes are broken. There's a lot of waste. It's pretty absurd. It's like trying to buy a very expensive suit without having a bath, so you're still stinking, and and you hope that the suit and the perfume, expensive perfume, will hide all your stench. So Mr. Contractor, so I have a question for you.
Yes.
Which is actually coming from the question and answer panel, is there is a lot of e-commerce has really picked up. I think there's hardly anybody who doesn't use e-commerce, or even for that matter simple delivery, food delivery and things like that. And what is happening is this efficiency that we see, or the ease that customers see in the e-commerce domain, that expectation gets extended to all other businesses. You may be a supplier of steel, or you may be a supplier of tractors. Somewhere the expectation is faster, better, cheaper, better experience. So I will start with you. So the experiences of our daily life that we see around, what I call as the WhatsApp ki dunya, where people expect immediate reply, immediate, does that also get translated and create pressure in our businesses? What is your comment? And I'll take that same comment to the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. In fact, this may be a little bit clubbed with the earlier question also. Pinak was talking about challenges, and you were talking about that we could not take it. Now, e-commerce and this, they have the same challenges. I'll give you my practical experience in my waste management business first. We are into industrial wastewater recycling for very highly concentrated wastewater, and we recover a lot of materials from that. Now, we have a lot of QC in place. We are meeting all quality standards. Now, as per our contract with the industries, they have to take the treated recycled water back to their premises. Unfortunately, they are scared because they are used to having fresh water. But the quality of this water is better. Now, as you say, after rechecking all our systems and procedures, we came to a conclusion that it is a mental block with the industries. That yes, fresh water we can have a better. So what we did is, we invested into hardware and softwares. And we converted fresh water, instead of supplying fresh water, we said we supply you steam. So that attracted everyone. So we were recycling about 1500 to KL to 2000 KL of wastewater, which industry was not ready to accept. And right now they are paying us for the steam. They are paying us for the wastewater. So this is what we studied. But here also our quality checks are very, very stringent. and we are maintaining all quality. Now coming back to your question of e-commerce, yes, this will be, but when we talk of industries, when we are talking about productions, and we are hardcore production guys, we are not into marketing. So we feel that for the industry, e-commerce will work, but then also a personal touch with the suppliers, for the suppliers or our suppliers or to whom we supply, to our clients. A personal touch is very much required, and at times for not big industries like Arcelor and others, but for smaller industries or MSME, priority decisions play an important role. So there, of course, we need to have instead of going for e-commerce, there your personal decision is far more better. And this also, e-commerce will have a good time management. But the previous two things play a lot of role, because your interaction with a variety of people is a must when you are in a small scale industry. And
Thank you.
This is what I would like to say.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
if you don't mind, can you please excuse me? I have one more meeting at 4:15. Can I leave this for 15 minutes early, please?
with the permission of Dr. Monica Suri, I, as the panel chair, thank you very much for your time,
Thank you.
sir. And,
Thank you very much.
Best wishes to you. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
All the
sir.
best. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So,
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So let's continue. So Mr. Kulkarni, I will come towards you now. I was talking about the expectations, right? Because I told you we are in an era where, as a consumer, as an individual consumer in our daily lives, we are experiencing a better and higher and faster quality of experiences. When it comes to when you order through an e-commerce platform, or it's a simple example of a food delivery, etc. Does this expectation really create pressure and translate to other businesses also? So what is your take on this?
I completely agree with this, because if I'm an Amazon Prime customer, anything that I order till 8 o'clock today night actually pops up in my house by 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. They just spoiled us, isn't it? And that too with, I don't know how many of you know this, but Amazon Rush was experimented for a delivery within 2 hours of placing an order. And that's experimented in India. If we just step back, because when we talk about e-commerce, we'll just have to step back and say, what are the key things that these guys have done to the industry? And not only the Amazonization of the supply chains, but impact of Amazonization on each industry supply chain. If you really look at it, it's time, cost, quality, and service as 4 key pillars. These are timeless pillars of competitive advantage to the industry. Time, cost, quality, service. What has actually changed due to e-commerce? I call it as the Amazonization effect on the supply chain. What has actually changed is that definitions and applications to the industry have changed. Just to give an example, time, I think, has dramatically changed as unit of measurement. I used to have a client in North India who used to be very proud to say that, look, I provide a customized crushing and screening equipment to the customer. So my lead time is going to be 12 weeks and customers are ready to wait because it's a customized product. It's not like Amazon, Amazon sells standard products, they're off the shelf. And I told him, look, till your customer does not get an alternate supplier, 12 weeks is okay, else you are going to lose business. Today we have brought it down to 7 days. So the customer places an order, you deliver it within 7 days. That's 11 weeks of lead time reduction. That's, I think, what time means for me. Cost is a very important component of this entire impact of Amazonization. Because you and I know that I actually go to a shop, I look at my Woodland shoe and then get that shoe onto Amazon and check what the price is. I mean, that's the rate at which people are now trying to save money. For me, cost has undergone a change. Landed cost to total cost of ownership, or if you use the term which McKinsey uses, total value costing. So people have moved away from this. In the industry, predominantly the manufacturing industry, we are not looking at landed cost calculations. We are looking at total cost of doing business with a particular supplier. The third pillar, which I love, is quality, and rightly said by you, quality of service. Amazon gave us quality of service. If you really look at it, 20th century, when we all grew up as students of the subject, quality was an USP for many companies. 21st century, I think quality is now, it's the price that you need to pay to be in the business. I cannot sell quality anymore. If I don't have quality, I may lose business. But having quality does not mean I'll get a better rate. So, in my opinion, it's the price that we are paying for being in the business. And the last, which I think e-commerce taught the rest of the industry, is the service component. And it's not about service as in, visibility of orders. I put a RFID tag on my truck and the truck is known to be where it is. That service is, or I'm saying I'm a third-party logistics provider, I'll keep the inventory in the warehouse on your behalf. I'm not talking about services like that. I'm talking about a disruptive service. So I think the Amazonization effect, which is basically the e-commerce industry effect on the rest of the supply chains of other industries, can actually be summarized in these 4 pillars: time, cost, quality, and service. And each one of them has a very large impact, the way I see it.
Thank you so much. So I think almost the last comments from Kiran-san, it is the same thing. Kulkarni-san spoke very well about this. So now you're a hardcore steel company. It cannot get more hardcore than this. So as a hardcore steel company, how was this Amazonization impacted your business, and expectations of your customers?
Actually, if you look at, if I share my experience 2 years back, when my CEO, Mr. Dilip Oman, asked us, look at Amazon, if you log in the order, it will throw out the due date, and then they will deliver before that due date. We have to be still, has to be delivered like this. And that vision started 2 years back, and this pressure of e-commerce we felt 2 years back, and we used to give abusing to Amazon, अरे क्या कर रहा है, हमारा life बर्बाद कर रहा है. But then yes, it gave us a lot of opportunity to improve, and now we are like Amazon, that whatever we give due dates to the customer, we deliver before due dates. So there, and that is there at the plant. But I also agree with Mr. Chetan's comment on the emotional touch, because e-commerce is not bringing any emotional touch to the customer. Because if you look at the traditional way of doing business, customer is coming, or our salesperson is going to customer, then they have a cup of coffee or tea together, and they may have wide range of businesses. They can, the salesperson is going for only 1,000 ton, and he may bring, if it's a very good salesperson, then he can bring 10,000 ton of orders, and he can have a good share of business with that customer which he was not having. So that is the what emotional touch is totally missing in the e-commerce part. But that I think going forward, I'm not sure, but it will be a major differentiator between the e-commerce and the actual physical sales.
So thank you very much. And I think, I would like to really conclude this, these wonderful comments by, I think some statement all of us remember, and that is, the cost is long forgotten, but it is the experience that is always remembered, right? So as things get more and more, they become faster and more efficient and technology driven, etc. I think one thing that every customer wants is experience, convenience, because that is what, that's the taste, the experience is the taste that remains forever in your memory. It's etched in your memory. So I think whether you're a steel manufacturer or you're a manufacturer of, a provider of services, it's a hotel, whatever it is, I think the objective of efficient supply chain management is to, what I would like to say is to make sure that things reach your customers on time, in full and error free. And when I talk of error-free, as Mr. Kulkarni or Kiran-san said, no more are we talking or looking at product errors. That is for taken. There is no question. People don't expect product errors. I'm talking of no errors in the transaction, no errors in the experience. So it has to be a holistic, error-free experience end to end, from the time you decide to transact with the company till the time the transaction is complete, and after that also. And so we are talking of 3 experiences which our MBA students and the MBA institution can focus on. One is the customer's experience with the organization. So I talk about today very often our Prime Minister talks of ease of doing business, and we keep talking of India's rank in ease of doing business has improved. But my question very often is ease of doing business for our customers with our company, correct? So how easy it is for them. So a lot of customers say, the product of this company is good, but it is a big pain to deal with them, right? So ease of doing business with the company. Second is ease experienced by the vendors, suppliers, when they deal with the company. And that is what we talk of partnership. Are your vendors saying, oh my God, here is a bully I have to deal with. Here is a, extremely cunning, principle I have to supply and deal with? Or is it a win-win partnership kind of based relationship that Kiran-san was talking about? And the third experience is for the employees themselves. And we celebrate it very often. There are awards like the best place to work, etc. So I think experience, a holistic experience, it should be a great place, great experience for the employees, a great experience for the customers, and the great experience for the suppliers. I think this is very important. And when these 3 things come together, I think everybody stands to gain across the value chain. So when it comes to an institution also, it should be, I see that an education institution has primarily 2 customers. One is, of course, the students. They are your customers. You got to make sure that they have a great experience. And I also feel, in my humble opinion, that the teaching faculty are also customers. And you have to make sure that they have a great experience. There is no muda, there is no obstruction to flow of anything to the teaching staff, so they can focus on teaching and not be bothered with a lot of wasteful activities, non-value adding activities. So with those comments, ma'am, I hand it over to Dr. Suri. Thank you very much for inviting all of us. And I sincerely hope those people who have logged in, I see about 64 people have logged in, have found some value for the 90 minutes that they have invested on this, on this panel discussion. Thank you, and over to you, Dr. Suri.
Your mic is off, ma'am.
Yeah.
Indrani, you may take further.
Monica ma'am, your mic is on mute.
So thank you, sir. Indrani, what is next for us in the sequence? So we'll go as
since already Mr. Murthy has wonderfully addressed all the questions, and we had wonderful panelists who have catered to all the questions. So it's time for us to invite you for your closing remarks.
So I think there should not be closing of such kind of intellectual sessions, because it is still the beginning of journey for each one of us. But as I have to do the responsibility of just delivering the opening remarks, closing remarks on this particular technical session, I think still I've learned one thing from the whole integration of all the perspectives and sections that you shared with me, that no compromise on quality, because this is time for innovation. Whether it is marketing or human resource or supply chain, until we will not innovate, will not sustain. So I think the survival of supply chain is also innovation, and how best we are bringing in this particular innovation the cost minimization and wealth maximization. That is actually the target and goal that we all have to design and achieve for us. And as I'm experiencing Big Basket as a brand since last so many years, I think now it's more than 2 years. And I felt that now during this pandemic time, they have added one more category in their supply chain when we just enroll ourselves and register our, shopping with them. And then they have added one more category. Like earlier, I used to mention there as a customer, I'm just buying this. But now they have included in the VIP customer, so that the delivery time span has reduced to 30 minutes or 1 hour. So if I'm a normal customer and just booking my order from that particular portal, mobile app, it will be delivered to me in next 24 hours or 48 hours span of time. But since last 15 days, I have seen a new nomenclature over there, another categorization as a VIP customer, so that the delivery will be there within 30 minutes to you. So every sector, every industry is trying to bring their best in the supply chain management also. So obviously with an objective to minimize the cost and maximize the wealth without compromising on the quality standards and excellence. I'm sure you all were talking about regularly about the qualitative aspects more on supply chain management. So I feel that excellence is the core, and the essence of excellence should not be diluted, because the whole supply chain model has to now move on to a CSR model for at least next 2 or 3 years span of time till the situation gets stabilized, and then we can move again back to the profitable models. So I'm so thankful to you, sir, for being here with us. And there were a lot of learnings for me, specifically as an administrator and as the faculty. And surely we got a roadmap for this particular supply chain specialization also. And we'll keep on taking your guidance, regular guidance, and your regular advice on designing of curriculum. And also we request you to help us and mentor us once we are offering students the internships, specifically the virtual internships to our MBA students in the area of supply chain. So I'll surely contact you again, and we would like to seek your help in this tough time of getting our students placed and getting them in a right best fit when it comes to their virtual internships as well. So with this, I hand over the session back to Dr. Richa for the further proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So here I take this opportunity to propose a formal vote of thanks to all of you. It was indeed a great session, and especially being a faculty of supply chain management, I could really learn more from it. And I think there are so many things we discussed, and the 3 takeaways, or what Ajay sir said, that the customers, the vendors, as well as the employees, they are very important for any supply chain. Yes, that is really very true, because they should come up together to make the supply chain worth it. And yes, the role of AI and BI and everything, how come it is becoming more important later? It is again important. And as Monica ma'am suggested, that supply chain will lead to loyalties when she gave the example. Thank you so much for all these deliberations and great points. Thank you, Pinak sir. Thank you, Gajiwala sir. Thank you, Murthy sir. And Chetan sir had to leave for some medical emergency, as he told us on phone. So I thank you all, and looking forward for more fruitful collaborations in future. Thank you, Indrani ma'am, my co-coordinator for the session. Thank you, Monica ma'am, for giving us this opportunity to all of us.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Jai Hind. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.